Yeah, okay, cool. Well, basically, I came from good parents and all that sort of stuff. And when I was in primary school, I don't, you can't tell my size by a screen, but I'm only 5'4". I put on a bit of weight through recovery and age, but I used to be very, very skinny. And being a young child, when I was in primary school, I was the perfect target of the bullies. And I was very
Mm,
quiet, reserved sort of child, very soft spoken, all that sort of thing. So I'd be beat up all the time at lunch, and my lunch money would be taken on me. I'd beat up on the way home from school. And it
mm,
became quite a constant thing in my primary school years. And I had a good mum who was very vocal. In those days, they didn't have bullying policy, any sort of policy with bullying. So it's sort of like fend for yourself type of stuff.
yeah,
Because I couldn't fight in those days, I couldn't defend myself. So mum would come down to school and she'd blow up the headmaster and cause a big scene, blah, 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 and get these bullies in trouble. So I became known as mummy's boy at that stage.
no,
And
yeah,
that just made me a bigger target, made it a lot harder for me. So
yeah,
I learned from a very young age just to shut my mouth and keep myself to myself, not tell anyone what's going on. That was probably the catalyst, for all the stuff that went after that. But
yeah,
when I was 14, I joined the local gang. My brother was a my brother's a career criminal, and he was a bigger, meaner sort of character, and like a little brother does. I look up to my big brother. I think
yeah.
he was like a god to me, so I just did what he did.
Where did you grow up, John?
Where?
Yeah,
Well, I grew up in South Australia, but I
mm,
moved to Melbourne when we were 15 years old. By
yeah,
then, the drugs had already taken place.
yeah,
I was already in the drug scene by then, and the first drug I ever did was alcohol.
yes. And what was that like for you?
Unreal, unreal. I still remember, not exactly the buzz sort of effect, but I do remember the impact it had on my life. And because I was in that gang mentality, I felt like I belonged somewhere for the first time in my life. And I was like their little mascot because I was so small.
Mm,
So it's like their mascot. And when I drink, I become very violent, obnoxious, loud, abusive, all that sort of stuff. And like I said,
yeah,
violence was a big thing in my story. And that really cemented my place in that gang mentality. I was
mm,
that little guy you don't mess around with. And I got known for
yeah,
that.
yeah, okay. Angry little man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That
Ah,
syndrome. But it wasn't, I don't know whether it was syndrome, that small man mentality, but to me, it was more like the alcohol and the drugs were the thing that fueled that sort of, that aggression.
yeah. What do you think that aggression was coming out of you? Was it something from your childhood or wanting to be seen?
Uh, Good question. I've never really, I think it's a mixture of a couple of things, actually. The protection,
Yep.
so that way people couldn't see who I really was deep down inside, that I was that really scared sort of young child still.
Mm,
And it was probably also, I came from good family, very dysfunctional family.
mm,
So I look back now, and a lot of this stuff is hindsight. You don't see it at the time, of course. You don't see
yeah,
any of this, but my family is very, very dysfunctional. Looking
yeah.
back right now, I thought it was normal. Well, not normal, but like these things happen. I thought it happened in a lot of these type of homes. But looking back in hindsight, with basically every member of my family, we had some dysfunction.
Yeah. Yep. Now, when you picked up, I know that you were in active addiction for 33 years. How did that progress from this initial drinking when you were a teenager?
Well, it started out, like I said, drinking was my big thing at first, and I drank to blackout straight away. I didn't, and I could never understand why people would go home. That was a foreign concept to me. Like, come
Yeah.
on, the party's still going. There's still alcohol left. There's still drugs left. What's going on? Why are you stopping? That was pretty much right. But it progressed into drugs. I mean, alcohol's a drug, as I'm aware of, but it progressed into other drugs because I started smoking dope at a very young age as well, and I couldn't do alcohol and drugs together. I'd green out, what they call green out.
Mm,
I had a decision to make, and I suppose I liked to be mellow sometimes, so I chose the marijuana. I still drink every now and then, but I wouldn't mix the two.
yes.
And I would smoke dope more. Amphetamines came into play at the age of 15.